The session today is part of the anxiety series, water anxiety series to be precise, and supported with by WforW, an NGO registered in the UK to work across the world on water matters. The session today is on peace and ecology in the times of climate change, and it is going to be really a very sensitive topic for us and especially to me to talk about. My name is Mansee and I'm the host from W4W. And I'm going to take the session further. Before we get into the session, let me just talk briefly about what do we do at Wednesdays for Water. The objective of Wednesdays for Water is to engage in conversation with water experts, grassroots practitioners, policymakers, and youth to explore the complex intertwined issues associated with water and the possible solutions our speakers are seeking for or working upon. The signature series, Wednesdays for Water, has gone quite popular in our water network, and therefore we have also extended it to more sessions, and we do Friday Waters, talkies, water arts, water thesis club, and meet a maestro, and at sometimes we also get hold of some book reading people, so we do water book reading. In addition, we are also doing Monday Munching and Musing with Women for Water, where we invite and acknowledge and appreciate the work of women in the water sector to really amplify their work. In today's session on climate change with peace and ecology, we are going to speak to Dr. Minal Pathak, Mr. Yusuf, Kabir, and as speakers, and we'll have our old friend who has been our not only mentor but also speaker, discussant in previous sessions, Dr. Suresh Rohilla. So welcome all three of you. Before I invite to make your presentations as a protocol, I'll do a very brief introduction of each speaker and then we'll take to the next speaker and go to the further. So we start with Dr. Minal Pathak, who is an associate professor and my colleague also actually at Ahmedabad University. She is also the academic director of the Climate Institute at the university. She was a senior scientist with technical support unit of the working group of IPCC, so Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, and she has contributed to 2 IPCC special reports. I know she probably just completed even one in the recent time, and she has also contributed to other global assessments such as the UNEP emissions gap reports, and she leads the South Asia Hub of Urban Climate Change Research Network in partnership with Columbia University's Earth Institute. She was a visiting researcher at Imperial College London and has previously held visiting scholar position at MIT. Her research focus on climate change mitigation, actions for urban settlements, transport and buildings, and their co-benefits, interlinkages with the development. Many more to talk about Minal, but we'll keep it short and invite her to make her pitch for the topic which we are talking today. Over to you, Minal, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this talk.
Thank you so much, Mansee. Thank you for inviting me here. And I'm going to just share my slides and make sure you can see the presentation. Can you please confirm this, Mansee?
I will. It's still arriving. Yes, we are there. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And please remind me of the time in case it spills over. So I was struggling to find a title for the session. What do we say? Should I focus on conflict? Should I focus on peace? Should we talk about water? And then I stayed in the safe zone that I'm going to talk about water and climate and where we are in 2025. And I know that this is part of the anxiety series, but I also feel like this is a time when we also have to think of hope. And so and people like us, especially this small group here, cannot afford to give up hope. And therefore, I think my presentation has a mix of both the beginning with a lot of anxiety and all the projections that we see on climate, which I think are not very new to a lot of people anymore, but also looking later at the solutions. So this is our most recent report, the emissions gap report. I'm not going to show you a lot of graphs, but this byline says it all, that there has been collective inaction on climate. And countries have fallen short, both in terms of ambition and also in terms of implementation. And right now, the fossil fuel consumption and fossil fuel burning and fossil-based energy consumption is not going down, despite all the warnings on climate. It is going down, I would say, but countries are still, so the renewable energy, we've made progress, but countries are still investing in fossil fuel based power. and therefore we are not on track. I think based on the most recent projections, the global warming may exceed 2.5 degrees, and we know that the world is striving to 1.5. This is also a figure from the Stockholm Environment Institute, Johan Rockström, which many of you may know. He works on these planetary boundaries, and every year they do this assessment, and we are at this unique point in history where multiple boundaries are breached. And in particular, the new entrant this year was ocean acidification. That boundary has now also been assessed to be breached, and that all of these systems that support humans, ecosystems, and all the other species on the planet, we have far exceeded the safe operating space. So the green color in the middle shows the safe operating space, but you can see most of these, whether it's biosphere integrity or climate change or novel entities or biogeochemical flows, these are all far beyond what the planet can sustain. And we are already seeing, so for example, on ocean acidification, we are already seeing that these impacts on these species, for example, the shells of these organisms are becoming thinner, they're becoming more brittle, and this is at the lowest level of the food chain. And then this is already spilling over to disrupt food chains, and we know what it means for food security, but we also know there are other associated challenges to breaching these planetary boundaries. And somebody very rightly said that this is the time for polycrisis. And by polycrisis, they did not mean just physical or environmental crisis, but also social and political. We are at a time where the world leaders are going back on their commitments. And I'm talking about the US, the biggest emitter, where a lot of good policies were reversed. We're also seeing large-scale conflicts and wars, and this is really going to affect the people who are not really listening to the call. Many of whom we know we are in South Asia cannot even speak English or understand what we are discussing, and these are really not good, very good times for the planet, I would say. So this is the only graph I would like to show because this talks about a concept called overshoot. And this talks about a time when the Earth may breach this 1.5 degree target and what happens. And some scientists already say that we may have, but the more optimistic one says, oh, it is still within reach because we could go and come back. So I don't know if you can see my cursor moving, but the blue line sort of shows that maybe we can exceed and come back to 1.5. So there is kind of hope. But the challenge is that is uncharted territory. We don't know what will happen in that space. We don't know. For example, species that become extinct, will they come back? Right? And we are making these infrastructures, but the infrastructures don't follow temperature targets. So how are we going to make those decisions in that period when 1.5 is crossed? So those are really the other challenges that we've just started discussing, not fully understanding. So there is going to be a major report on tipping points that is going to come out, and how these large systems will just go to reach thresholds and maybe to a point of no return. And at this time, while we discuss this and all these issues, we know that there is a very big meeting going on in the world where world leaders are discussing the future of the planet. And I don't know what to say about that, but I saw today that about 56,000 delegates have registered. And this is the second largest climate COP in history. And this is the 30th such meeting. So what more can we say about whether political leaders can really solve this issue, or the extent to which they can solve this issue? So coming to water, this is again from the IPCC report that was published in 2022. This is just one graph. There's a lot of detail, but we know that there are multiple issues around water. For example, that some regions will have more rainfall than others. Some may have increase or decrease in dry spells. Some may see very heavy rainfalls, but concentrated in shorter periods of time. And roughly, I think about 8 billion people are estimated to face severe water scarcity for some part of the year. So this graph shows shows the number of months, and you can see that these impacts are also sort of more concentrated in the poorer countries and mostly in the global south, countries which are not well equipped to address these challenges. And I think Yusuf will pick up on some of these vulnerabilities in his talk. So I want to now switch gears and move to the positive side, the hope that I see. And I just picked two global projects, and there are many great projects. I'm sure a lot of you would also have some. This is one of my favorites because this is it's Cheongjeong in South Korea, and where there was this highway, and this was dismantled to make this, what you see on the right, the stream was restored. So what happened with the wars and all the events in the country, this stream was buried and built over. And at some point, the country and the city actually decided that we don't want this highway. It's leading to a lot of pollution. Let's make this instead. They dismantled the whole highway. And we're seeing that because of this project, there has been an improvement, of course, in water availability, but cooling, biodiversity. It's created a great public space. It's reduced automobile use and improved air quality. So I personally really like this example because it's also an example of transformation, that it's an example that when there is a will, such an ambitious project can actually be funded, be implemented, and demonstrate positive results. This is the second example. It's from Rotterdam. It's a smaller project but what I like about this is the participatory nature of the project. So there were all these buildings, and Netherlands has an issue of flooding. So they decided to recreate a public square. So what you see in the middle, the green square, is actually designed to absorb a lot of rainwater when it floods. So there are channels underneath those steps which collect the rainwater and bring it down to the ground so the place does not flood. And when it's not raining, it's a great public space. You can already see people skating and walking, etc. And the great thing about this is that all the buildings you see there had a say in how this was developed. So this was a participatory design project where people came with their ideas, and finally they worked together to create this project, which is also a very successful project. So back home, what are we doing in Indian cities? And I'm seeing a lot of positive plans and actions. So on the top right, the photo you see is the sponge parks in Chennai, and Chennai now has a goal to make 31 sponge parks to collect rainwater. And now the good news is that the municipal corporation is walking the talk. So they have a dedicated budget to make these sponge parks. And also some of the other larger cities have infrastructure-based strategies. The one on the right, bottom right, is Ahmedabad's Catch the Rain scheme, which they launched, and it did not really pick up. So now they've decided to implement rainwater harvesting within the public buildings. So it's almost like setting an example. But when we started comparing these cities, we saw that in the larger cities, we're seeing more infrastructure heavy strategies where there's more, more technological and model-based planning, whereas the sort of other cities, middle, small cities, they're sort of implementing nature-based solutions, restoring ecosystems, and sort of opting for more decentralized solutions compared to centralized solutions. And this sort of just shows the change in the disparities in governance that we see between cities, the capacity of cities, the funding they have. So where are we now? Well, I didn't even need to give this talk because we already know that there are solutions that exist. We have understood the problem well. And we were discussing just before the talk that Suresh already mentioned this. So Suresh, my second point is that you cannot isolate water issues from all these other issues, including climate, people, food, energy, and nature. They're all connected. And we have to find solutions that address multiple challenges because we are at that time in history. I think why this is not happening, or why we are not able to scale up these pilots, is there are persistent governance issues, and we really need to. So it's no longer scientific or technological. I think it's more related to governance and political will. And I think there's an over-reliance on nature-based solutions that nature will do it all, but nature cannot do it all. In a warmer world, trees cannot sequester as much carbon, and there is a limit to what nature will do in the future under scenarios with higher warming. I also wanted to touch upon some solutions that are being badly implemented, including fast-growing species, monocultures, even green spaces that are not thought through, and these could actually adversely affect water security in cities. And so finally, we need a combination of political will, not just policy, but implementation, and of course, behavior change, that we cannot leave it to the government. And this is my last slide. And many of this was actually awarded the graphic of the year. It's also an IPCC graphic, of course, showing the warming stripes from 1900 to 2100. But it also shows that if you are an individual born in 1950, what kind of climate will you face in 2020? It gets worse when you are younger and born around 2020. So the climate that this generation and the future will face will be much severe under higher warming. I will stop here and pass it to Mansee. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Meenal, for being so, short and straightforward. And importantly, I am sitting in Rotterdam today, and I lived at Bentham for 7 years. So I know what people went through. But just to highlight the point that in the Netherlands, you cannot do any single stone, any single pole without approval of the community and the water boards. Every development in the country happens with the water matters. So that's a completely different scenario. But having said that, they have their own set of problems. Netherlands is below the sea level. But let's move on to the next. So we live constantly in anxiety. So here in Netherlands, but we don't use that concept here too much. Let's move on to our next speaker of the day, and we have Mr. Yusuf Kabir, and who is water sanitation and hygiene, which is WASH program, with a specific focus on climate change and environmental sustainability, a specialist, and he is from UNICEF India, based out of Mumbai. UNICEF has worked in the WASH and CCES, or climate, environment, and sustainability, as well as disaster space, for the last 25 years. And UNICEF is there for more than many years. I mean, I don't even remember how when UNICEF started making huge imprint in the country. Yusuf is author of 3 books and many peer-reviewed journals and papers. As a Commonwealth scholar and Sun scholar, TED speaker, and a trained policy writer, currently he is pursuing his doctorate in business administration from EU Global on climate, environment, and sustainability. So we see match with both the speakers today here. He's supporting the government in planning, capacity building, implementing, and monitoring household level rural water supply and sanitation programming focused on demand side management, water for productive use informed by increased climate variability, and capturing community of practices. He has designed and leveraged public finance for community management, energy resilient water supply, and working closely with national and subnational government, bringing pilot to scale and integrating climate curriculum in schools and undergraduate colleges of Maharashtra. Yusuf and I also had a good discussion when we had the water festival on peace, that we need to work more on peace. So I invite Yusuf. Thank you so much. It feels so much at home when Yusuf starts talking. Over to you, Yusuf.
Thank you, Mansee. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. So let me share my screen. Thank you for the Water Foundation, W4W Foundation, for inviting UNICEF and myself to share my thoughts. So I think Mansee, Dr. Minal nicely mentioned about that, the hope. So let us see whether the hope meets the actions or not. So, so the presentation, I think the topic is that I always believe that, and I think Mansee has also mentioned that the climate crisis is a water crisis, and as UNICEF, we work with the children. So I'm just taking the clue of the last slide, IPCC slide, the excellent slide Dr. Minal presented of 2023, that what is the definition of sustainable development? It is a promise made by the present generation for the future generations. So the topic of my thing is that attacks on water are practically attacks on children. And why I'm saying so? I'm just giving you some statistics before I go into my presentation. The present child population in India is something around 350 million, and in the world it is something around, it is going around, let's say 2 billion. So 1 in every 7 children in the world lives in India. So Mansee mentioned about that, Dr. Minal mentioned about that 56,000 registration in the COP 30. So with the kind of expectation like we are looking for, that the children who is born in 2025, how after 100 years of independence in 2047, what kind of world are we going to give them in India? So right now is 2025 and 2047 is 22 years. So that's why from the UNICEF perspective, we always believe that what is the impact of climate change, and also linking with the water, with the entire development, early childhood development, learning, protection, and survival growth of the children. So everybody has seen this SDG. Like we are on the last we are 5 years before the SDG is completing. So SDG is made of 5 P's, like people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. But I find this slide very interesting from the Stockholm
Oh,
Resilience
sorry,
Center.
Yusuf. Sorry. Yes, I have to interject because your slides are not visible. Sorry.
Slides are
Minal,
not
I
visible.
think you are saying the same, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. I couldn't see the slide.
Yeah.
Let me do again. Share
Yeah,
the
because
again.
I thought you were initially giving the warm-up speech, but then when you said slide number, then I realized. Yeah,
Yes. Now is it visible?
coming. Yes, it is visible. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So now everybody knows about the Sustainable Development Goals, like it is on the 5 P's, like planet, people, peace, prosperity, partnership. But we try to see here that how the 17 goals are being covered in a more like a pyramid structure. And if you see the pyramid structure, the foundation is the biosphere. And biosphere is nothing but the sustainable development which are linked with the planet. And the second pillar is the society. Society is people, and the economy is the prosperity. So what I'm trying to say that if we cannot sustain our biosphere, or if we cannot attain the goals of the SDG for the 15, 14, 6, and 13, we cannot achieve other SDGs. It is very clear from this slide. And it is, and I will come with a lot of other empirical data and evidences. So this is how it moves. Now, UNICEF in 2021 did a global children's climate risk index, and and India's rank out of 193 country is 26th, and with some 350 million children in India, the 26th rank is quite an alarming. So that's why I use the word water under fire, that climate crisis is a child right issue, and at the same time, water crisis, and how the children are most impacted due to climate change, and what is the most important role the water is playing, and the entire water, energy, and the food nexus, and how it is impacting our, whether you call it as a peace, whether you call it as a conflict, or call it as a collaboration, how it is impacting the thing. Going back to the next slide. Now, we say that we're suffering from a triple planetary crisis, that climate change, environmental pollution, and natural resources and biodiversity loss. And children are impacted disproportionately. That is the fact in all globally, especially in India and the South Asian countries, that children in urban area, children in rural area, children in slum, a child in a tribal village are not equally impacted by climate because of their coping capacity, because of resources, many other issues. And this is also a very interesting slide. It's not that dated, it is only 5 years old. Like, what is the kind of a weather related child displacement happening every day? And it is equates to some 26,900 new weather-related child displacement every day. And you can see that India figure, it's quite alarming. And these figures are being properly documented with a kind of a meta-analysis data. So how the entire distress migration is happening due to climate change and where water is playing a major role. Now, I come to the entire vicious cycle that I was trying to mention. Like if you see a child in the center, now in the below at the lower end, if you can see my cursor is moving. So there's some unsafe environment, maybe at home and outside. There will be conflict, fragility, lack of governance structure, of course, the poverty, lack of education, lack of health and nutrition facility, lack of water supply and sanitation. And in between, within a family, a child is there. And child is facing increased vulnerability to climate shocks and increased exposure to climate shocks. And which are the different shocks that are things, scarcity, kind of a extreme climate hazards, water scarcity, river flooding, coastal flooding, cyclone, disease. So air, soil, what I'm trying to say that water is very much kind of an integral part of all kind of a manifestation. So, and ultimately what is happening, this combined impact is is increasing the disparities and also pushing the poorest children further into poverty. So it is increasing. So what is at the end of the day it is doing? It is increasing the inequities within the society. And climate change is one of the important reasons for that. Now, how the climate change is impacting the water cycle. Now, if you see that this is something that we are seeing reduced snow cover, some of changing precipitation, maybe salination of the drinking water, and how it is impacting the entire paradox and how it is impacting the children, especially children living in these areas, like the children living in dry lands, children living in urban slums or low-income settlements, living in community in the areas where the wastewater are being disposed, living in low-lying lands, living in coastal zones, living in near rivers that are prone to flooding. So it doesn't always need to be a war or a conflict zone. It can be a normal condition in a country, but the climate change and the severe environmental pollution is making them more vulnerable. And if I am giving just an example, like we seeing that like cyclone, the drought intensity, the rainfall precipitation, entire climate or seasons are shifting. So if you see the potential impact of the drought and kind of a water stress to the children, and if you see that the circle, like the outer circle is the indirect impact, but the inner circle is a direct impact. And what is the direct impact? Of course, there is a mortality, but infectious disease, there is a decreased school attendance. When there is a less of water, the first thing is to just close the school because there's no water in the school. We have seen that due to hydrological drought, there is a shrinking food basket, and it increases the wasting or stunting or the malnutrition of the children. It also increases child labor, distress migration. So what I'm trying to say that there's a water is creating so much of stress to the not only to the family but ultimately to the children. And going back to the next slide, then what is happening? It is creating a double disadvantage because already there is some kind of a poverty, and climate change is further increasing the multidimensional poverty. This is the global figure. Like children live in area with a high and extremely high drought severity, like 160 million children. 70 million children are living in areas with high and extremely high drought prone severity in countries where with low access to improved sanitation. So climate change, water, and other deprivations are coming as a multidimensional poverty for them. And what is happening? That I mentioned in the first slide that how climate, water, and the climate change is increasing the inequities, and where the conflict comes. The children from the wealthier families who have access to afford buy food, access to clean water, have continuous access to healthcare, like any basic services, they recover very fast. But the children from the poorest families who doesn't have that kind of a capacity to absorb that shocks, to those exposure, that vulnerabilities, they go for a long-term deprivations. And the cumulative effect is nothing but it is increasing the inequities. So impact of, I just mentioned, so it is increasing inequity. And with these things, it is somehow creating a conflict within the society. And conflict, we don't have to wait for a war to have a conflict, but the conflict is becoming within the society. I have some suggestions, very few suggestions, that I have seen our NDCs of different countries. Though we say that the entire climate intervention is for the future generation, but that there are very little scope and the platform for the children and youth to make their voices. So make the needs of the most vulnerable, including children, the central to the climate change adaptation. Of course, spatial protection, social, like climate resilient social services, providing the poorest children with access to safe water, adequate sanitation. So it has to be very targeted intervention, like how to increase their resilience. That is also very important, like reduce inequity among resilience to promoting their future to resilient to climate change. Also listen to the children voices. What is their perspective? In the COP30, out of 56,000 registered thing, how many are children and youth? I don't think it will go in 3 figures. I don't know. Dr. Minal may be having the detailed figure, but their percentage may not go into the double figure. So they provide children and youth with climate change education and awareness raising and training. So climate curriculum or the climate literacy, and I believe Ahmedabad University, I saw that foundation course of the water. From whichever sector you are, this education, this climate literacy is very essential. And our NEP 2020 speaks about this inter-experiential learning. And the last thing is that invest in children when implementing national climate plans on mitigation and adaptation. As you know that India is coming up with a national mitigation adaptation plan. It is an answer to our own loss and damage fund. It was supposed to be released in COP30, but somehow it is not. It is being released maybe in the after parliament session sometime in January or February. But it may be a change maker to the entire loss and damage fund, and I believe that there will be a lot of space for the children and the youth. So this is my last slide. Hence, I can say that be climate conscious, not climate anxious. Thank you. Thank you, Mansee.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yusuf. And you raised a very pertinent point. How many people are attending the COP, especially youth and children? And I think Yusuf and I, we have been very much keen in this topic. And particularly, I am very keen that more youth joins our conversation. Most of the time, our discussant is a young person. But today, because we have a very serious topic, again, I personally, from my side, I fail to invite a youth to have these questions. But we will have Dr. Suresh Rohilla to be the discussant of the session. I wish we had a youth, but I think Suresh is going to be the voice of the youth for the day. And it's so important that Yusuf raised a point that how we have normalized the vulnerable situation in everyday living, and with that we don't have to really look at war or any kind of conflict situations, but actually these inequities itself is a conflict in the established system which is normalized. So before I invite Suresh, you heard both of them, and I would like to do a very brief introduction to all of the participants here. Dr. Suresh Rohilla is a distinguished figure in the field of urban water management, with focus on integrating water considerations into urban design and planning to foster climate resilient, water efficient, and sanitation secure cities. He has been part of International Water Association and Worldwide Fund for Nature with many think tanks, and especially when I get to know Suresh, he was already leading the water sector of Center for Science and Environment and doing a lot of training programs across India for all kinds of stakeholders in the water sector. And before that, he has been actually all over the world, I must say. I'm really keeping it simple and short for Suresh's introduction, and I will, because I would like him to engage with our speakers. Suresh, you know, you are the voice of the youth today, and thank you so much for being available every time I reach out to you with an SOS button that Suresh, we need you in the session. Over to you, Suresh, and please ask some uncomfortable questions to these guys and maybe be a child for a day or for this session.
Thank you, Mansee, and thank you, Yusuf and Minal, for both taking me through, some things which actually, if you look at, though Mansee said that I have been around in the sector almost 3 decades.
Yes.
And when I started, or when I got anxious and why I should work in this sector was some people used to say that the Third World War will be on water. And actually, 3 decades have gone. So World War on water has not happened, but there are issues which remain, but there are also solutions which have emerged. But I think both of you have raised, Milan and Yusuf, both of you have raised very important points. I would start with, Minal's presentations, where she covered up basically, the on the polycrisis thing and as a driver of instability. And then she moved on to urbanization, scarcity, and social unrest. And then, she talked about water wars, which I was mentioning, and then about governance things which we lack. So my first question would be basically, Meenal, to you. And don't be afraid. There's no correct answers to this because this is a political world where we lack governance. We on water basically. But I would say that all these threat multipliers, what you are talking about, how are these climate-induced shocks or water shocks, you can say. I'm allowed to use the word water. So, they are breaching the ecological thresholds. That's correct, I understood. But, how would they result in social tensions, displacement of population, and destabilize regions, or create open conflict? I wanted to know that or hear a little bit from you on that, because this 1.5 degrees is there. And I will pose the second question also to you, because also it will be very important for us to know when we say that, these other solutions which we are saying, and you did say that nature-based solutions may not be the ultimate solution. But what I'm trying to say, are there any examples like, if we say poorly implemented dam or, desalination plant, have they intensified social divisions? Have they created discontent among the communities? So it would be for us to look at both the sides when we say that what works and what doesn't work, or an hybrid will work. So these are 2 questions, and maybe I'll come back to you more later. And do you want me to pose questions to Yusuf also, Mansee, at the moment, and he can think over by the time?
It's up to us because we can be more efficient times. So Meenal also gets time to organize her thoughts. Maybe you can pose the questions to Yusuf as well. So both of them get
To
time.
Yusuf, very interesting presentation. I enjoyed it, and I would say that you started with your direct impact and moral framing of the issue. Then you moved on to the scale of crisis and displacement. Very interesting statistics and numbers you presented, and the regional realities and solutions. But for you, an interesting question, because you work with international organizations like UNICEF. So I should not spare you for asking that, how can we use the existing frameworks? For example, the international child's rights frameworks, like the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, to hold governments and corporations accountable for climate inaction which directly impact children. So that would be my first question, because if India is signatory to these, then why should this not be done? And other thing is, what specific policies in water management and urban planning and public health are something which is not negotiable to protect the children from the worst impacts? So these 2 questions, and I may come later on the other questions if there is time permitting. So I hope I have given time to Meenal to think over. And
Well, you have given me time to think over, but you have also asked a very complex question. And since this is an open fora, I will go ahead and answer to the best of my ability. I think, I mean, there are many ways. I would just give the example of forced displacement or migration as we understand, right? That is just one clear example of how poor water management and associated impacts have pushed rural populations into poverty, and how they have ended up migrating into cities, and how they've been in really precarious situations. So I think that's one example of a social impact that you can see sort of trigger. You cannot make a cause effect relationship, but a lot of people who come and work in cities live in really poor quality housing with almost no infrastructure, and that is really a result of poor resource management in different parts, and you see these impacts triggering into different regions. So that I think is one example. And we also know that some interstate disputes have arisen because of these decisions, which were taken these were very top-down decisions, and really complete disregard for communities, particularly farming communities. And I think climate sort of worsens these, because there is already a pressure on agriculture with low yield and low returns, and then now climate is that added stressor, and then these impacts are compounded. I'm also hearing a lot of I'm also actually looking at some data on food prices, and we know that like food prices will mean that more people may go hungry, but we know who will go hungry, what kind of population will not get enough food. But it's also not about enough food, it's about nutrition, and we know that these impacts also are felt more by women and children. So there are all these complex interactions because of resources, natural resources. And your second question poor quality nature-based solutions, and how
or any other water solutions which have like dams or anything which has really caused conflicts, if we are questioning, or make a strong case for nature-based solutions.
Yeah, well, I can talk about some social impacts. I don't, at the top of my head, remember a conflict case, but green grabs is like a known thing, right? That there is forced displacement, and large-scale projects tend to sort of displace the local populations. We also know about some conservation projects where some tribal communities were evicted from these reserves. I think also green spaces or beautification projects are these examples where in cities you have I don't know, I want to give the example of the riverfront, but then I'm now treading into dangerous territory. But for example, large beautification project which displays populations, and if you try to look at the data, then we only see the numbers. So X number of households resided here and they were provided compensation. There are no names, and it's really hard to find information on who those people were, where they were relocated, whether that compensation was enough, and what is the quality of life of those people who were displaced. So I think these are some quick examples, but I think most of these trade-offs happen because of land use conflict and other resource sharing.
Can I ask a tied up question? Because you said that, for examples from this were not available, but whether you can suggest any India's national foreign policy or national security strategy to overcome, or do diplomacy such that they can have more cooperative water sharing and conflict sensitive adaptation things. Because you have worked in the adaptation space. So if not on the city level or urban, then can you tell us any national security strategy what countries should adopt? Any idea? What should be
No, before I answer your question, I would just like to highlight we had the Heritage Conference last week at Ahmedabad University. Very interesting conference, and you had like really amazing people talking about natural resource and historical legacy and castes and marginalized populations. And one of the speakers came from Himachal Pradesh, and he was really proud to state that his village was the only village which protested against a hydro dam, and that was for him a success story. So
Okay.
what we are trying to say is whose goal is it, right? Like climate mitigation, whose goal? Who wants? I mean, is it fair to ask India to reduce its emissions and go for clean energy when we are still so low in terms of our emissions and we are still so poor? So I think sometimes decisions are taken that may benefit the community and they may not be seen to be aligned with the national goals, but it is what it is. I don't think, I mean, my advice for policy making would be first, we have to start with participation. Mansee already mentioned that, right? A lot of these policies are made in Delhi, where even experts are not invited. I can tell you for sure that there was an Ahmedabad resilient city plan. And not only that I didn't find out until the plan was fully made, but just to access the plan before it was publicly released required me to send a whole lot of emails. And it required an international research scholar who was working with us to go to the AMC office to get the plan. So I think we really need to do better with involving people in decision making, even if it's representatives of people like Yusuf representing the youth and children, for example. I think we have a long way to go.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Interesting, and I will have actually reserve my question later because I always try to quote this, and I will quote now before I invite Yusuf to talk about it. Actually, the earth is not dying, it is being killed. The people who are killing have names and addresses. This is by Uta Phillips, and I'm always wondering how we try as as professionals, we really try to not confront the problems and work around it, because we also have other obligations to fulfill in the society, and also as scholars and scientists remain very objective and not really get deviated with things which are happening. So that's a very important topic when we talk about conflict, that should we really pinpoint, because when COP is happening, you also know, Minal and all of us know that there was a good protest also there. I mean, I am very big fan of protests, to be honest, but let me keep that protest aside. Yusuf, the voice of children. You have to unmute, huh? And then may I request all the participants to post their questions. I see some interesting comments coming up. You can also raise your digital hand, okay?
I think coming from the UN organization, I think Suresh raised a very right questions. Like, Suresh, you know that we have the largest ratified child right convention of like CRC. So, and there's a very interesting movement has happened in general comment number 26, article 26 in the CRC, whether the climate crisis have been included as a child rights issue. And there, all the at least 190, more than 190 countries are signatories, including India. So this amendment was done in late 2023-24. In addition to that, also there's a very interesting Supreme Court order. I don't know, many of you may be aware. In April 2024, there was a Supreme Court case, if I remember, by Mr. AMK, I think Mr. Some Ranjitish and Union of India. And Supreme Court gave an order that the climate change as a part of fundamental rights under Article 21, that is the right to life, and the right to equality, that is the Article 14 of the Constitution. Even the similar, another case also there in the February 2025, even in November 2025 also. So there are a lot of Supreme Court verdicts are also there where the climate is seen as a right-based approach, or climate crisis and the environmental sustainability has been seen as a right-based approach. So both internationally and nationally, there are kind of a conventions, protocols, orders, regulations are there. Unfortunately, the NDCs, that is the national determined country, our NDCs of the countries, the role of children and youth are very limited. India is still much better than many other countries, I must say, because after Mission Life, which is launched in the COP26 by Honorable Prime Minister, uh, there has been a lot of impetus has been given by the Ministry of Environment and Forest to engage youth and children in the climate actions. Now we have a program in the school under PMC program, which is eco clubs and the green clubs are there. Uh, the the National Education Policy 2020 is openly speaking about the water and the climate as a cross-cutting intersectoral issues. So I think that I taking the Dr. Minal Singh that there's a hope. I'm still hopeful the hope meets the action. So it will take time. Of course, it will take time, but and as rightly pointed out that by Bansi also, that this normalizing this inequity is more concerning to me. Like ये तो चलता ही है. That the chalta hai attitude is something that is more concerning to me. And whether it's a more climate change, natural or anthropogenic, that is also we need to ask ourselves. Like what is happening in Delhi in terms of air pollution, or even in Mumbai also, the air is not that clean, but better than Delhi. uh, and on your second question, that like case of water management, urban planning and public health for the children, one of the major thing is that still we have a huge number of preventable deaths due to water contamination, mostly diarrhea. Also, we have pneumonia and other ILI diseases, which is also linked with hygiene. And these are preventable and very simple, cost-effective solution like hand washing in critical times with soap, using ensuring safe potable drinking water. Like there's a study that if you hand wash your soap, only soap after defecation or before eating meal, the chances of diarrhea prevention reduces by 37%. It's a Lancet metadata. And if you use potable water and soap and sanitation, it reduces by 50 to 55%. So for me, I don't go for a very huge infrastructure intensive solution, but the entire behavior change. And we should not forget COVID. COVID taught us that how important it is for personal hygiene. But people followed because of out of they're scared of death. So after 2 years, we forget again following all this hand washing and all these thing critical times. So I believe for the water management, urban things, and public health improvement, I believe that these communicable diseases and also some non-communicable diseases like the indoor air pollution, other things, and it doesn't require a huge investment from government. It requires social behavior change communications, IEC, outreach, and also access to basic, very basic social services to the low-income settlements, urban slums. Yeah.
Thank you. But I think one important thing I want to ask, when you were talking, I picked up that, are there some critical and unexpected allies who could advance this agenda, like pediatricians, religious leaders, or education sector? So how can this be advanced, so that, these risks can be reduced? Because these people play an important role, pediatricians and religious leaders for hand washing, cleanliness, all those things, and educators. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good question, Suresh. And we have seen this in the polio. India never thought that India can become polio free. Since 2013, we don't have a single polio case. And in the polio program, if you see that along with Government of India, Rotary, UNICEF, many other organizations, religious leaders played a very important role. So similarly, we have a global interfaith wash alliance in India, which is very active. So they are promoting that thing. Then, so I totally agree. These religious leaders, opinion makers, legislatures, they play a very critical role. And like today is a very critical day today is World Toilet Day. And today's World Toilet Day, if you see the Government of India's slogan, is the Hamara Shauchalaya Hamara Bhavishyat. Like our toilet is our future. So they are linking toilet just not as a kind of a structure, but also part of a improved public health and dignity. So I totally agree that this religious leaders,
Pediatricians, you want to
and the
say?
pediatricians also. I can give you a simple example in the pediatrician. We did it in Swachh Bharat Mission program. Like if you go to any pediatrician or any doctor, if you're suffering from a diarrhea or in other cases, they will never ask you that we have a toilet in the home or have you wash hand. They will first prescribe you certain medicines or some deworming. So in one of the program in our Maharashtra only, in one district, they along with the prescription of it was in the public health facility, they put 3 photographs: toilet, drinking water, and soap with the water. So doctor used to first ask that whether you have this in your house, because a doctor is something like a god to the villagers. Then the doctor used to go for any kind of a diagnosis or everything. So I believe the pediatricians and doctors have a major role to preventive part. The curative part, we are very fast, but the preventive part, if a doctor start ask simple these questions, that how are you, whether water is potable, do you know the kind of water you are drinking, are you washing your hands with soap in critical times, where are you going for open defecations? So these are the very simple questions if they ask. And these days it has become a very fancy in nature that everything we link with the climate without anything. It is an excuse. Sorry to say that I believe that it is more about our own behavior, our more anthropogenic. It's more about the environmental pollution. That's why in my presentation, I have said that it's a triple planetary crisis: climate change, environmental sustainability, and loss of natural resources and biodiversity. So of course, your point is very well taken. And we have excellent example of polio eradication in India, where the doctors, religious leaders, from every corner played a very critical role.
Okay, thank you so much. I think it's a good time that we actually invite our participants so that they also feel inclusive. But a very important point raised by both of you, also responding to Suresh's difficult question. And maybe we invite, I don't see Somi Bhattarai there now, but I see there is a question from Pradi Zala, but I don't see Pradi Zala as well. But maybe we go to Aslam Syed, and that's a question for Yusuf. Aslam, would you like to please unmute? And maybe it's always advisable, or we appreciate that our speakers, our participants are also opening their video and talking to our speakers. Human Connect.
Yeah, Yusuf bhai, good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Aslam bhai.
So I saw your slides on water crisis, and there is a lot of stress on people when there is a drought everywhere in Maharashtra. So my question was, how is there any research work done on this Palghar district, because it has one of the heaviest rainfalls in Maharashtra, but in summer it becomes very dry and people have to walk kilometers to find water. And there is a lot of stress on the children and women. So anything on that?
Yeah, a very good point, Aslam bhai. The entire issue of the Palghar district is you'll be surprised to know, everyone, that Mansee, Minal, Suresh, that the district is only 50 kilometers from Mumbai. But when you go to the district, you'll find that it's a different kind of altogether country. And he's rightly pointed out the average rainfall in the district is 3,000 millimeter. But still, in the in the summertime, the tanker goes. And one of the major reason is that the entire rock is the hard rock. The permeability is very low. So the water discharge capacity is very high, and the recharges are not that good. So yes, there has been a lot of research data available for Palghar. There is an organization called Groundwater Survey and Development Agency in Maharashtra. They are the state counterpart of the CGWB, Central Groundwater Board. So with the piezometers and with all these things, they have created an aquifer maps in the Palghar districts, including the micro watersheds, overexploited watersheds. Everything is there. But for me, the data is not more important, but how the data is being translated to the knowledge and information and it translated to action. That is a missing link here. Not only Palghar, in many parts of Maharashtra. Like what is happening in Maharashtra, like all of you know that we are seeing some kind of a, like the water extraction, groundwater extraction in India is more than the combined groundwater extraction of USA and China.
Yes.
And in many times in Maharashtra, it is many times our Popatrao Pawar Saab, who is very well known, he used to call a term like water mining. We are not extracting groundwater, we are doing water mining. So what is happening that I always give an example that the groundwater is more your fixed deposit and your surface water is a kind of a current or savings account. But we are just taking out your fixed deposit from the groundwater, over extraction of the groundwater. And what is the exact question that Aslam Bhai has shared, that the same areas we are seeing the sugarcane or water guzzling crop cultivations. And so it is sometimes, it is not always due to the nature, but also due to our practices. And those practices are very critical to work on that thing. But yes, data is available. In India, there is no dearth of data, but how to translate the data into the action, knowledge, and information to the community is the most critical.
Oh, that you raised a very important point, and I remember Niti Aayog writing 2 years in consecutive on the composite water index that we have more data management problem than the water management problem. So it's about managing the data well. And personally, I believe that it is more a moral crisis and social crisis than climate crisis, which also resonates with what Yusuf you were talking about. It is all about the fair distribution of resources, or how we are doing water governance, what Suresh was talking about. But there is a very interesting point, and I would like Minal to take up, because I still remember the nudging of waterfront. But Prada is not here, Prada Zala, and I suppose Prada is from Saurashtra. If you can check the chat box, because Pradi is not here. And talking and I think it is a more sarcastic comment written in the chat box. It's good to take it up, because we are here to discuss, and this conversation is so wonderful. And I really wish that we have more discussions on peace, we have more discussion on children, because these are the things which are taken too lightly or casual in everyday discussion. I don't hear Parliament talking about children. What are we talking about then in SDGs and climate crisis? So, Minal, do you read Pradi Zala's comment in the chat box?
Yes, I do read it, and I can actually give you a live example from Ahmedabad. I'm sitting 5 kilometers away from the riverfront. And if anybody who had been to Ahmedabad before knew that Sabarmati was a rain-fed river, it sometimes had water, sometimes didn't. And over time, it was just a trickly stream, so to say. And thanks to the Narmada water, or no thanks to the Narmada water, but we have now a very beautiful riverfront, which is like it is still a very good public space, but it's very concrete. A lot of people were displaced in creating that riverfront, and we are entirely dependent on the Narmada River, and there is such a tussle for the water, and of course this has happened at the expense of the farmers downstream, and we already know that. So it is a trade-off that some of us see, but I think largely it has been promoted as one of the top projects in the state and the country.
Oh, it is actually the model project for more than 100 riverfronts. And let me just tell at this point in time that actually we are running a riverfront series, and I'm very happy to share with all of you that on 3rd of December, which is a Wednesday, we are going to discuss Sabarmati. I don't call it Sabarmati riverfront, I call it Ahmedabad riverfront. And partly what Yusuf was talking about water mining, I use the word water grabbing, and I have actually presented some papers in conference and published. On 3rd, we are doing Sabarmati riverfront, 3rd of December, or Ahmedabad riverfront. They call it Sabarmati, I call it. And then on 10th, actually in the riverfront series, on 10th of December, we go straight away to Jammu and Kashmir and hear the people and experts from Jammu and Kashmir. Just to let you know that we are taking this difficult topic, because in Sabarmati's Ahmedabad riverfront, there were more than 25,000 people who were displaced, and not even 50% people got their share back. So there is something which I also wish to share at this point, because the session is organized and hosted by WforW, that last 2 years, 4 of my students carried out research, their master's thesis research on displaced areas, and we were completely focusing on women anxiety or women's vulnerability to disaster prone. So we focused only on a very extreme condition, not the normalized what Yusuf was highlighting. And I want to bring forth the very idea that yes, there is a lot of cure response to situations in disasters. But when we talk about preventive, there are not many. And all the 4 situations, we had man-made disaster, which is Manipur, which I did personally fieldwork. My student went to Nepal, then a student went to Kerala to look at Wayanad, and a student went to Indonesia. So we are doing this as an international project. And what we found in most of the cases, and they said that we really do not get, even as part of cure, healers, psychologists, to come to us and talk to us. We know this problem will recur, but we do not have opportunity to express ourselves. So one thing is giving them medication and supplies in the disaster situation and making sure their water and sanitation for a very limited time. But another thing is, when we talk about anxiety, we are also talking about mental well-being, which is still not in the water security system, which I was actually now currently running a research on and presenting at many platforms. What about water anxiety and water security? Is there a fund for it? Is there a policy for it? We can discuss this in another water anxiety series, but for now, I think we will have to close the session, because I see Zeenat has some question, but I think Zeenat, we will take this question. Actually, it will be part of maybe Riverfront, and I'm sure you are going to join us there. You have been also a good student to join our sessions. So maybe you hold that question for December 3rd or December 10th, because that will be more, I will suggest that is more appropriate question. Before we close the session, I would also like to announce and also express my gratitude to all our speakers in the past, more than 600. Actually, we are going to touch 700 speakers very soon by the end of December, when we touch 425 sessions, that they are making it possible. So if you know a speaker, if you know water people who are really enthusiastic to speak, we strongly believe that water conversations are crucial for water conservation. Next week, and in fact this week, we have a very interesting session coming straight from Bangladesh as part of the International Association of the Study of Commons, which is a global Ostrom scholar group. We are actually talking about in the IASC Asia series this Friday at 5 p.m. We are doing Friday Waters book reading session, and we are going to talk about 10 years of water discourse in Bangladesh. It is hosted by Action Aid for us, and Action Aid has been close to me because I've been working with them, so I could manage to get their speakers on board. 2 book editors, they are our speakers. Imtiaz Bhai, very well renowned water scholar in Bangladesh, and of course Action Aid director Farah. So Farah Kabir. Next week, we have equally interesting session. Finally, I got hold of on Monday, Munching and Musing with Women for Water, the very well-known Ghazala Paul from Samarth Trust, and she will be speaking about her own journey in the water sector. On next Wednesday, Wednesdays for Water session, we continue with our nature-based solution series, which is also running, initially supported by Guru Jal, and now we are running it on our own after they have mentored us. We are discussing nature-based solution through community practice. So we will really hear what happens when people take up nature-based solution. That's it from next week, but we are completely booked till end of January, which means we are going until January at least. And I hope that you will also suggest us more speakers. I would really like to take the children's series probably sometime with you, Yusuf, if it is possible. And maybe youth series, why not? And I really want to replace myself with a youth sitting here all the time, but it's not happening very soon. I need to find a very dedicated and motivated youth to talk about it. Thank you so much, Suresh, for being there always with me for these sessions. And thanks, Yusuf and Minal. See you there. And by the way, Minal, in your university, when you invited me for the keynote speech in Columbia University, I actually presented Climate Crisis is Moral Crisis. That was the title of my presentation at your institute. Thank you so much, all of you. Please take care, and we see each
Thank
other
you.
soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you
We
so
really
much,
enjoyed the
everyone.
discussion.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it was
Thank
very
you.
good
Bye-bye.
discussion.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.